It has been since a long time since we have joined to revise standards on auditing. So now we will go back to standards on auditing with SA 315, identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement through understanding the environment, the entity and its environment. So it's quite an important standard either from the intermediate level perspective or even the final level perspective. Intermediate level, only this part will be tested. What is there in Saransh will be tested, but at the final level, all questions, any problem, any sort of questions can be asked from this standard. So that's how important this standard is. Okay. See, there are certain standards which will be placed one side and rest all standards will be placed on the side. For example, SQZ 1, SA 315, SA 570, SA 600, 700 series, those all will be placed one side, while rest all standards will be placed on the other side. That's how important these standards are. Okay. Now, if you have not watched the previous SA 600, 700 series video, please do watch it. Okay. But any further delay, let me move on to the standard. Scope of the essay. This essay deals with the auditor's responsibility to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement in the financial statement through understanding the entity and its environment, including the entity's internal control. I am going to understand the entity and its environment along with its internal control perspectives so that I will be able to do my audit with certain risk level, and I will also be able to identify the material risk of material misstatement. Then we'll check with the essay also directly from the pronouncement. The same. Okay. Now, objective. The objective of the auditor is to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement. Just give me a minute. Okay, let's leave it. Okay. Identify and assess the risk of material misstatement, whether due to the fraud or error at the financial statement and the assertion level through understanding the entity and its environment, including the entity's internal control, thereby providing a basis for designing and implementing the responses to assess the risk of material misstatement. By this, it is going to help the auditor in reducing the risk of material misstatement to acceptably low level. Only when the risk of material misstatement is at acceptably low level, I will be able to justify my opinion, right? I am very quite sure that my unmodified opinion is proper or my modified opinion is proper, right? Then, for the purpose of this essay, we have certain terms like assertions. Assertions refers to the representation by the management, explicit or otherwise, that are embodied in the financial statements as used by the auditor to consider different types of potential misstatement that may occur. Those are representations that are embodied in the financial statement. Business risk resulting from significant conditions, events, and circumstances, actions, or inactions that could adversely affect an entity's ability to achieve its objective, execute its strategies, or from setting the inappropriate objectives and strategies. Then, internal control. It's an important definition again. Okay, the process designed, implemented, and maintained by those charged with governance. Design, implemented, and maintained. Design, implementation, and maintenance. Okay, by those charged with governance, management, and other personnel to provide a reasonable assurance about the achievement of the entity's objectives, to the reliability of the financial reporting, effectiveness and efficiency of the operations, safeguarding of assets, compliance with applicable laws and regulations. The term control refers to any aspect of one or more components of internal control. Those processes being set with a view of design, implementation, and maintenance are done by the TCWH and management with a view to provide a reasonable assurance that the figures given are proper. Those will be known as internal control, and thereby in this increase the reliability on the financial reporting or the effectiveness of the process which have been carried upon. Risk assessment procedures. The audit procedures performed to obtain an understanding of the entities and its environment, including its internal control, to identify and assess the audit procedures I'm going to perform to identify and assess the risk of material misstatement will be known as risk assessment procedures. Then, significant risk. And identify assess the risk of material misstatement that requires special audit consideration. That is very much important. High important risk of material misstatement would be known as significant risk. For example, risk of fraud. Okay, whenever significant risk comes to your mind, correspondingly should come risk of fraud should come to your mind. Okay, that's how your preparation level should be. Now, then, the risk assessment procedure shall include the following: enquiries, analytical procedures, observation, and inspection. I say ORR, right? In that I have to have four things. One is inquiries, observation, analytical procedure, and inspection. Then, the auditor shall obtain an understanding of the following. What are things the auditor has to obtain an understanding to evaluate, identify and assess the risk of material misstatement. These are things about the entity and its environment, right? What are things? Relevant industry and regulatory and external factors, the nature of entity, what are things? Operations, ownership and governance, type of investments, and where the entity is structured. This is important. Okay. Operations, ownership and governance, type of investment, and where the entity is structured. The entity selection and application of accounting policies. And if there is any change during the current year, you have to get the reasons there too. And then objective strategies. What is the entity's mission, vision, and objectives, and the measurement and review of the entity's financial performance. So let's repeat the keywords alone. Okay. Relevant auditor shall obtain an understanding of the following: relevant industry, regulatory, and other external factors, nature of entity, including its operation, ownership, and governance, type of investment, the way the entity is structured, and how it is financed, and the entity's application and selection of accounting policies, including if there is anything, we have to mention the reasons, then the entity's objectives and strategies, and the measurement and review of the entity's financial performance. And it is internal control. In that, we have the nature and extent of relevant controls. Okay, generally the auditor has to obtain understanding of the internal control which is relevant to that particular audit. Maybe this may be little fast, okay, because we have to cover within a period of, within a span of 40 minutes. Okay, I'm planning to cover the entire standard within a span of 40 minutes. So it could be a bit fast. If it's fast, you could please pause the video and note the keywords. Okay, you hear it, note the keywords and pass it and then resume it. Okay, then. Nature and extent of understanding of the relevant controls. When obtaining an understanding of the controls that are relevant to the audit, the auditor shall evaluate the design and determine whether they have been implemented and check by way of inquiry. I have to check the design and then implementation, and correspondingly I will have an inquiry with respect to the maintenance. What are the components of internal control? Control environment, risk assessment procedures. Yes, then control activities, monitoring of control. Right, one thing we have missed, right? IT related something would be there. Yeah, information system and its related process. Like this, we have read in EISM, right? Those who have read from Inter, right? You would remember this. CRISM. So control environment, components of internal control is a highly important question here also. Control environment, risk assessment procedures, IT, that is information system, including the related business processes, control activities relevant to the audit and monitoring of controls. Let's repeat: CRISM, control environment, risk assessment procedures, information system, including the related business processes, control activities and monitoring of controls. Okay. Control environment, there should be a oversight, they should have a oversight with the culture of honesty and ethical behavior, and the strengths should provide an appropriate foundation. And it is risk assessment process, identifying the business risk, estimating the significance of the risk, assessing the likelihood, and deciding about the actions of those risks. See, and it is risk assessment procedure. What are the risk assessment procedure that the entity carried upon? Okay, auditor's risk assessment procedure is different, while entity, it has also assesses risk, right? For that, it has to identify the risk and then identify the significance of a particular risk, assessing its likelihood, that is probability of its occurrence, and then deciding about the actions to address those risks. And then move on. Information system and its related business process. The auditor shall obtain understanding of the information system. What are the things you have to obtain? Classes of transaction that are significant, procedures, both manual and information technology related accounting records, how the information system captures the events and other transactions, and then the financial reporting process used to prepare the entity's financial report statements and controls surrounding the journal entries. Again, this is a important 4-mark question. Okay, these are the questions that have been asked in the past MTP, RTP, or the exam itself. Okay, that's how important it is. Okay, so auditor shall obtain understanding of the information system via what? Class of transactions that are significant, procedures both in IT and the manual, related accounting, record supporting information, other things, and then how the information system captures the events and conditions, and then financial reporting process which is used to prepare the financial statement, and control surrounding the journal entry, which is the non-standard journal entries. It is transaction outside the normal course of business. Then, control activities relevant to the audit. The auditor shall obtain understanding of the control activities relevant to the audit, being those auditor judges if necessary to understand in order to assess the risk of material misstatement at the assertion level and design further procedures responsive to the assessed risk. I have to understand and then decide my procedures in response to the assessed risk. Monitoring of control. The auditor shall obtain understanding of the major activities that the entity uses to monitor the internal control over the financial reporting, if COFAR, and including those related to the control source control activities relevant to the audit, and how the entity initiates the remedial actions with efficiencies in its control. Now, identifying and assessing the risk of material misstatement can be either at the financial statement level or at the assertion level. For the purpose of this, identify the risk throughout the process of obtaining understanding of the entity. Assess, identify, assess, relate the identified risk at what can go wrong at the assertion level. Consider the likelihood. I have to first identify and then assess the identified risk, and I have to relate the identified risk to what can go wrong. What is the negative consequence that could happen in the particular accounting level, I mean assertion level, and then I have to consider the likelihood of the misstatement. Risk that requires special consideration. Special consideration means what? Significant risk. Significant risk, right? Risk of fraud. Risk of fraud. This is again an important question. Short answer. Okay, these are all short answers which could be asked. I don't say that all these questions will be asked in the exam, but these were the questions which have been asked or which could be raised in the exam. Whether the is related to the recent significant economic, accounting, or other developments, the complexity of the transaction, whether the risk involves significant transaction with the related party, degree of subjectivity, whether the risk involves significant transactions outside the normal course of business. Its transactions are with the normal course of business, right? There are 6 points. First one is whether there is a risk of fraud, whether there is a risk related to the significant economic, accounting, and other developments of the regulatory environments that requires a specific attention and complexity of the transaction. The risk, whether the risk involves significant transaction with a related party, degree of subjectivity, and transactions outside the normal course of business. Risk for which the substantive procedure alone do not provide sufficient appropriate audit evidence. In some risk, the auditor may judge that it is not possible or practicable to obtain sufficient appropriate audit evidence only from the substantive procedures. It may relate to inaccurate or incomplete recording of routine or significant class of transactions or account balances, but often permit highly automated processing with no or little manual intervention. See, there are I and see if it is IT related control, mostly it will be of control rather than the test of details, right? So in that case, I will obtain less test of detail evidences from the substantive procedures. Revision of risk assessment. The auditor's assessment of the risk of material misstatement at the assertion level may change during the course of the audit as additional audit evidence is obtained. In circumstances where the auditor obtains an audit evidence from performing the further audit procedures, or if new information is obtained, either which is inconsistent with the audit evidence obtained, the auditor shall revise the assessment and modify the further plan procedure accordingly. Whether revision of risk assessment is permissible, yes, it is permitted as per SA 315. If you obtain additional audit evidence which proves the earlier obtained audit evidence is something wrong and some misstatement is there, then or it is inconsistent, then you could revise the risk assessment and modify the further planned audit procedures. Documentation. What you should document? You should document the discussion, key elements of understanding, identify and assess the risk of material misstatement at the financial statement level and also at the assertion level, and the risk identified and the related controls about which the auditor has obtained the understanding. First is I have to document what are the discussions I've made, either with my team or with the management, and then key elements of understanding. What are the things aspects I've understood, and then I have to make a note, identify and assess the risk of material misstatement either at the financial statement level or at the assertion level, and the risk identifier and the related controls about which I have obtained the understanding. Then again, it will be forming part of small questions which could be important. So you could please get a note of it. Okay. Or is one thing which I would suggest is either you get yourself noted in your laptop, or if you have your old pronouncements, please note it down there. If no options, both are not there, okay, at least take it runs around 50 pages. Okay, this is quite important standard. Please take a printout. Okay, that's what I could suggest. Okay, I know everything you can't write everything in your notebooks. That's why I suggest this. Okay, it's up to you now. The understanding establishes a frame of reference within which the auditor plans the audit and exercises professional judgment throughout the audit. For example, what are the activities I have to do? I have to assess the risk of material misstatement. I have to determine the materiality. I have to consider the appropriateness of the accounting policies, and I have to check and identify the areas where those are significant audit risk, and then I have to develop the expectation and use the same for performing the analytical procedure, responding to assess the risk of material misstatement, evaluating the sufficiency and appropriateness of the